this video, guys, I'm going to show you guys how to achieve uh, atomicity within Power Apps. So to explain what an atomic transaction is and what ACID stands for, I'm just going to quickly ask my good old friend ChatGPT to explain ACID transactions in a database to a newbie. Basically, what ACID means is that a transaction, like inserting records, updating or deleting data from a database, must always do the following things. The A stands for atomicity, meaning that if you're patching or creating records within Dataverse, if one of the records fails, then the whole transaction should fail and roll back. Consistency means that all the data that's going into the database must be consistent, that there should be always referential integrity, and all the data must be in there. Isolation, we're not going to worry too much about isolation right now, but that means for example, if you're trying to book a ticket for a plane, there's only one ticket left. If there are two people trying to do it at the same time, then only the first person that books the ticket should get the ticket, and the other person should fail. But we're not going to worry about isolation. Maybe that will be a topic for a different video. And obviously durability means that once you post a transaction to a database, it stays there forever. In today's video, we're gonna focus most about atomicity, which means that once you post there, if you have a parent-child relationship and you're creating a record for the parent, and then at the same time you're creating child records, if one of the child records fails, that means that the whole transaction should be rolled back. That way you don't end up out there with orphan records or records that are half posted, right? What I mean is, in my scenario, I have a simple app in which I'm creating records for a pet and then a pet appointment. So imagine this application, you have a user that's creating a pet, and at the same time they're creating a pet, they're creating appointments for that pet. What I'm going to simulate in here is that when I'm creating my pet appointments, I'm going to introduce an error in the database to show you what I mean. Basically, within my pet appointments table, the date is a required field. So I'm going to create, two appointments. One of the appointments, it's not going to have an appointment date, therefore introducing an error into the database. So what I should expect in this case is, once I create my new pet, and then I'm trying to create the pet appointments at the same time, is that since there's an error in the transaction, atomicity will come into play, and that means that everything will be rolled back, and that you should be left with no pets and also a no pet appointments within the database. Of course, I'm working within Dataverse because Dataverse is the best data source for Power Apps. So one of the first things that I'm going to show you for this example in order to achieve atomicity is something within the relationship called a parental relationship. So I'm going to go back to my table. I'm going to go into my pet table. I'm going to go into relationships. So there's a one-to-many relationship between pet and pet appointments, right? So I'm gonna search in here, for anything that contains appointment. So here it is, right? There's a one-to-many. It means that one pet can have many appointments. And usually when setting up this relationship, a lot of people don't pay attention to these settings, but there's something in here called relationship behavior. And what I really want to do for this type of behavior is I wanted to set it to be to parental. That means that any action that I take at the parent record will cascade down to my child record. In this case, whenever I delete my pet, I'm going to also go ahead and delete all of my appointments in order to make this happen. So what really happens here is, if there's a problem with one of the appointments, then I'm just going to go ahead and delete the master pet record, and that in essence would also delete all of my child records. This might not be the behavior that you want all the time, but for this case, in this example, this is how we're going to set it up. So go to Dataverse, in the relationship, make sure you set it to parental. And then this is basically the code that we're going to be reviewing, right? I'm going to paste this in the description of the video so you guys can have a kind of a sample of how this will work. So basically, I'm going to patch my pet table with a new light demo YouTube video, right? And then after that, I'm going to check if there's an error, right? So the first thing that I'm doing is, if there's an error while I'm creating my pet for whatever reason, then at this point, then throw an error to the user, right? And at that point in time, just stop the whole transaction, right? do not even try to create my pet appointments if you have problems creating a dependent record, right? Second thing is, if there's no error while I created my parent record, then go ahead and create the child records. In this case, I'm just basically mimicking creating a collection with pet appointments. One of the records is correct, and one of the other records is missing the date. So that means that there's an error in here that should bring atomicity, and it should roll back the full transaction, right? And after I do this, then I basically I'm gonna go ahead and patch my appointments or my child table with the collection. And then I'm gonna store the result in a variable. The reason why I'm storing this in a variable is because once I patch this, I want to check this variable for errors. So I'm gonna say if it's error, if my child records or my appointments contain an error, obviously notify the user there was an error creating the appointment. And then at this point, I'm gonna go ahead and delete all of the records. So basically what I do after that is, if there's an error creating the child records, then at that point, go ahead and delete the parent record. And since the relationship between parent and child is parental, then at that point, all of the child records will be deleted. And then I'm doing a refresh here at the end. And that's because when I delete my child records, right, the Power App doesn't know that happened. So, I basically want to refresh the table to get the latest and greatest. Not often you have to use refresh. This is very, very, very specific case where I use refresh, and that's because when I delete my parent table, it's not the Canvas app is not getting any information from the child records. That's why I have to force a refresh in order to get the transaction. So I'm gonna go ahead and demo this. I'm gonna go ahead and live demo. I'm gonna go ahead and play my app, and I'm basically going to just press this, and that should error out, and nothing should be posted to the database. I'm gonna go ahead and press it. Basically, you saw quickly in here, that there was a new transaction, and it automatically deleted, saying here there's an error creating pet appointments. We'll delete all now. So if I go back and check my database, I should not have a record called live demo YouTube video. So I'm gonna demonstrate that to you guys. I have here another, looking inside of my pet tables, a model driven app. I'm gonna search filter by equals, right? As you guys can see, there's no record, and just to prove it to you, I'm gonna go back into contains, maybe live. There should not be something in here. There's other stuff like pet and test live, but nothing that was created today. Look at the created date, right? Today is May 16, 2025. So this is one way you can achieve atomicity when creating parent and child records within Dataverse and Canvas applications. Um, Obviously, you could do it other ways with Pro Code plugins, more specifically because you have access to the pre-image and post-image, so you can take advantage of that situation in order to achieve atomicity. But if you're working with low code within Canvas apps, this is the way I would recommend you go about achieving atomicity. Please leave any comments in the video below, and let me know what else another topic that you may want me to talk about. Till next time, see you guys later.